we know that he wasn't supposed to say that because that clip has since been excised from the episode.
Whoa! What if the Mind Flayer is Will?
The Mind Flayer is a metaphor for puberty.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Is like that chasm between childhood and adulthood.
Every nerd who has ever bullied, there's like a piece of that flows into this collective stream that becomes the Mind Flayer.
Is the Mind Flayer almost like the dark side of the Force?
Why do they all know who Mr. Whatsit is? Like, they must all be reading A Wrinkle in Time. Time travel is going to be part of this. Stranger Things: The First Shadow, the play we all saw, right? There could be a musical adaptation. John Chu, get on it.
Our version, the 2020s, is Skibbity Toilet. That's our rock and roll.
Did the Will Byers actor spill the beans on who the real big bad of the final battle of Stranger Things Season 5 is?
Rumors. Does Netflix hate theaters but love theater? Rumors.
Lego my ego Lego leak?
Rumors.
This is the Rumor Rundown, where the hosts of New Rockstars investigate the wildest rumors that nerds and newsmen cannot make heads or tails of, applying our own backgrounds in journalism and Hollywood connections, and finally confirming whether those rumors are honest scoops or bullshit poops. We are Erik Voss and Zach Huddleston.
Hey, thrilled to be here on the right side of the upside down, and excited to talk Stranger Things rumors.
We're talking Stranger Things today. We're on the right side up, you could even say. That will be the finale episode's title. We're digging into Stranger Things here today. And I know some of you are like, wait a minute, didn't you say that the Rumor Rundown was going to turn into a show called The Road to Doomsday on the New Rockstars channel in the month of December? Yes, I did say that, but we wanted to give ourselves some more time. So just to catch all of you up, this show, The Rumor Rundown, it's going to be something that we continue to do on the New Rockstars channel, just from time to time. We're not going to do it weekly. We're going to do it when there's actually real juicy rumors that people are curious about, and then we'll come up with this format. But instead, weekly, starting in January of 2026, in the new year, will be a show called The Road to Doomsday. It's going to be a weekly podcast here on the New Rockstars channel with myself, sometimes Zach, sometimes some others. Jessica and I will be doing it most of the time, but we're going to have a rotating group of co-hosts that come in and out. And each week, we're going to be revisiting some key film or TV series or something that we think will be coming back in Avengers Doomsday. We're basically creating the essential rewatch list for Avengers Doomsday. Everything you need to know, every movie you need to watch. We realize there's something like, 80 titles potentially. So the first episode of The Road to Doomsday, it's going to be one of two. It's either going to be The Road to Doomsday revisits the Blade trilogy, or The Road to Doomsday revisits the X-Men trilogy. Ooh, the first 3 X-Men films.
Yes.
We know that there were more, but they were originally conceived to just be a trilogy, ending with X-Men 3, The Last Stand. So, yeah, those are going to be, that's what you can look forward to. It's going to be kind of like New Rockstars rewatchables. It's going to be just 2 hosts revisiting that and breaking down what you need to know. And rather than it being like an Easter egg breakdown, because we've already done that for a lot of these movies on the New Rockstars channel, this will just be like a conversation of 2 super fans who really love this trilogy of films. And it won't always be trilogies. Like, we'll probably just do Iron Man as its own episode, the first Iron Man. But yeah.
And specifically, not only geeking out over these films and series that we love, but like how the things in those could show up in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And we'll probably do an episode that looks back on the Avenged Chairs announcement day in March of 2025. We'll do one looking back on the announcement of Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom. That needs to be its own episode. And so we'll be covering as much stuff as we can, not just MCU films, obviously, but like, the New Line Blade movies. We want to look at the Ben Affleck Daredevil and Jennifer Garner Elektra films. We want to look at the Punisher films
maybe
from Lionsgate.
A little Ghost Rider might sneak in there.
Yeah, Ghost Rider could work in there. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We want to do a full episode on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter, you know? So in those, you might see some special guests pop up. So stay subscribed to this channel. And if you're listening to us on podcast, stay subscribed to this podcast. It's going to be a really, really helpful and fun rewatch series that we're going to do in 2026.
I'm very excited.
Just want to do a little preview for you guys. But we're not talking Marvel today, because you may see some other Marvel news and Marvel videos on the channel this week. We'll see. Here we're talking Stranger Things, because we're in this Advent period. Zach, I don't think you and I have talked about Stranger Things on the air yet on the Rockstars. What have you loved about these first 4 episodes?
A lot. I think like leaving us in some intriguing places with some big questions still out there, maybe introducing things and not fully explaining them or like leaving them unresolved is fun storytelling. Knowing that they would have a gap in between these blocks is clearly, this initial drop of 4 episodes was definitely written and produced with that in mind, knowing that there would be some cliffhanger, ending on a big set piece, but not resolving everything, I think was really fun. And it was good to spend time in Hawkins with the characters we love, right?
I think so too. And this is the first season. Well, I guess season 4, they did half and half, right?
Yeah.
This time they're doing it in 3 batches. So we won't know what happens next until Christmas. And then we'll have 6 days after that. Gives us the finale, a 2-hour finale on New Year's. So we've been thinking, well, Vecna must be the big bad of this show. But our first rumor today from an interesting source is making its way over to us from some other rift in the wall here. A red, gooey rift.
Weird, gross.
A hand is reaching over to us. What is going on? Oh, my gosh.
A little piece of paper coming through the rift.
Oh, thank you so much. Harry Potter! Harry Potter! Okay, so here's what the rumor says. Okay, so this is our first rumor. The ultimate big bad of Stranger Things is not Vecna. It is the Mind Flayer controlling Vecna. Who in the world would scoop and claim this? That sounds like a bunch of bullshit. The source here is, Noah Schnapp, actor who plays Will Byers.
Whoa!
I think we actually have a clip for this. Do we want to play the clip?
A spy and builds tunnels and then gets exorcised out of him. Season 3 is about Billy and Eleven fighting this new monster that's the Mind Flayer. Then I don't know what else in the mall. Season 4, Sadie's running up that hill and the music is introduced, Vecna's introduced, and he's the big bad boss who's run by the Mind Flayer. We get deeper into the lore.
Ooh.
Juicy stuff. So context on that. That was a Hot Ones episode in which the 4 actors from Stranger Things appeared. And Noah Schnapp, the Will actor, was tasked with summarizing the entire plot of the first 4 seasons in 20 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds, I think.
Yeah.
And then, so, once he gets to season 4, he talks about Vecna there. And he says that Vecna is the big bad who's controlled by the Mind Flayer, and then he gets cut off. So that's contrary. The way I interpreted the end of season 4 is that Vecna hijacked the Mind Flayer for his own purposes, but all the clues we're seeing in season 5 are that the opposite happened.
And can we talk about a couple things there? One, I love, and it's part of the great success of Hot Ones, is putting celebrities who've done a million interviews off base so they might say something more interesting or that they're not supposed to say. And we know that he wasn't supposed to say that because that clip has since been excised from the episode.
Whoa.
This, of course, some intrepid viewers grabbed it and threw it on Twitter, but that clip is no longer part of the Stranger Things cast interview.
Wow.
So clearly the Netflix brass or a PR exec or something like that was like, you got to cut that out. But there are there's a lot of interesting stuff about that.
Yeah.
One, I mean, the language of big bad.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't it to me, big bad means like the ultimate evil, the final boss of villains, the ultimate antagonist, right? So doesn't that inherently mean if the Mind Flayer is controlling Vecna in some way, that the Mind Flayer is the big bad? It kind of like neuters Vecna a little bit if he's just like the main henchman, or do you interpret that differently in that like maybe the Mind Flayer is almost like a creeping kind of virus that has infected Henry Creel, turned him into Vecna. He still has autonomy. It's just the general force of evil of the Mind Flayer is guiding his actions somewhat.
Yeah, you could say Vecna is essentially the bipedal vessel of whatever this evil is. In the same way that like Darth Vader is arguably the more interesting villain than Emperor Palpatine is, but Palpatine is the one kind of using Darth Vader as his tool to exact his whatever. And or in similar ways that like, in the Antichrist is kind of just like the actor on this mortal plane who's doing the bidding to usher about the apocalypse. So maybe that's what Vecna is, but it does lead us to wonder, then what is the Mind Flayer? Because at the end of season 4, I think we all kind of felt like, oh, Vecna is this interesting kind of like villain, and we know his origin story now, and he ended up going to this almost, you could say, tropical landscape with different demogorgons and this Mind Flayer who he greets, who now looked nerfed when he seemed to say he was taking control of it. And then it almost felt like the way Eliath is in in Loki, where it's just kind of this neutral thing that is very powerful, and that Vecna used this like force of nature to become even more powerful. Now it's suggesting that the Mind Flayer is something deeper and more that the show hasn't told us yet. And it's making me wonder, then, could the Mind Flayer be established as something like a form of Will Byers's angst or shame, or every nerd who has ever bullied, there's like a piece of that flows into this collective stream that becomes the Mind Flayer. And so now the Mind Flayer is this thing that just exists on this other plane of anybody who ever played D&D or a video game and just like had to be by themselves and like didn't have friends. And then, I don't know, whatever, it's going to be a metaphor for something. And that is what is now using Vecna or using Henry Creel. Because I think Stranger Things, The First Shadow, the play we all saw, right, established that when he was a kid in 1953, he went to this Nevada cave, and that boy, Henry Creel, had nothing wrong with him. He was just exploring. But then when he went to that cave, he ran into this stolen equipment from the Nevada experiment, and he was taken somewhere for 12 hours. And that when he came back, he was not Henry Creel anymore. He was essentially just like, his blood type changed. He had a different personality. And the Henry Creel, the teenage Henry Creel who we hang out with in Stranger Things, The First Shadow, hanging out with Joyce Maldonado and Jim Hopper and Lonnie Byers and all these other people, Patty Newby, that was not the Henry Creel who walked into that cave. And that somewhere there's a young Henry Creel who's still trapped. So we shouldn't even be calling him Henry Creel. And that everything that we've seen Vecna do, all the evil things, and even most of the stuff in Stranger Things, The First Shadow, was really the personality of the Mind Flayer, was really potentially the personality of every nerd out there, like Will Byers or Holly Wheeler.
That makes me think that the Mind Flayer is a metaphor for puberty.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Is like that chasm between childhood and adulthood, and the kind of the scariness of it, the transformative quality of it. You go in one side and you come out a different person on the other side, right? And so much of this show has been about, each season is explored in different ways, kind of like coming of age, puberty, you know, having to leave behind your old friends and the things you used to do for new, you know, girlfriends and sports and, you know, D&D, transforming and into the Hellfire Club and all this kind of stuff. That would be interesting. But you're saying that, like, see, I read it differently, that the Mind Flayer and that entire like entity and dimension is this kind of Lovecraftian evil that exists on a different plane of existence, right? And maybe the, you know, Henry Creel and his process of becoming Vecna and whatever happened to him in that cave created like a branch or a bridge between this, you know, Mind Flayer dimension and ours, right? And so though it would be like, I guess like, is the Mind Flayer almost like the dark side of the Force in that way, or something like that? And you need a Sith Lord to really bring that dark side and give it power and make it a tangible person in our world. That will be interesting, because like ultimately, does the Mind Flayer have a personality? Or is it just like a force? Is
it just a primordial evil, abstract evil? I think you may end up being right, Zach, because like we're talking about the Duffer Brothers, we're talking about Stranger Things. The deepest it goes into metaphor are these pop culture touchstones like Dungeons and Dragons, like certain video games, like Madeline L. Engel's A Wrinkle in Time. And then there's certain other reference points that they use, Ghostbusters, right? And then beyond that, they don't really get into the kind of like woo-woo stuff that much.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of other examples of fiction that do this, but they use things like Camazotz and the It from A Wrinkle in Time to kind of make it an understandable metaphor for viewers who grew up reading this stuff. Today's episode of Rumor Rundown is sponsored by Rula. We're big believers in taking care of your mental health, whether you're going through a rough patch or just want to better understand how your mind works. Therapy can be a really useful tool, but finding a therapist who takes your insurance can be a real pain. Many don't work with insurance at all, which means you're stuck paying the full cost out of pocket or paying for an expensive monthly subscription. Today's sponsor, Rula, does things differently. They partner with over 100 insurance plans, making the average copay just $15 per session. That's real therapy from licensed professionals at a price that actually makes sense. Rula isn't just affordable, the experience is tailored to you. Rula considers your goals, preferences, and background to provide you a curated list of licensed in-network therapists who are actually aligned with what you need, because they know that finding the right therapist can make all the difference. There's no wait lists and no frustrating back and forth. Rula makes it easy to find a mental health provider who is accepting new patients, and appointments are available as soon as tomorrow. Plus, Rula sticks with you throughout your journey, checking in to make sure your care is helping you move forward. Thousands of people are already using Rula to get affordable, high-quality therapy that's actually covered by insurance. Visit rula.com/rumor to get started. After you sign up, you'll be asked how you heard about them. Please support our show and let them know that we sent you. That's rula.com/rumor. You deserve mental health care that works with you, not against your budget. One of the things that I speculated in the breakdown actually was confirmed by a lot of you in the comments. I can't believe I missed this. I speculated that, like, why do all the kids who are chosen by Vecna, why do they all know who Mr. Whatsit is? Like, they must all be reading A Wrinkle in Time. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's why it's all these kids, is they're all in Holly's class and they must be on the same reading list. Sure enough, if you look in that classroom, it says an assignment for A Wrinkle in Time on the blackboard.
They're reading it as a class.
They are reading it as a class. And that's why the character's so important. The teacher is so important. That's going to get revealed in episode 5 or 6. I know it. That, like, Derek Turnbow, a kid like Derek Turnbow, he's not reading. That kid plays video games unless it's required from him.
I mean, he is a dipshit, but he seems like otherwise a pretty sharp kid.
He gets redeemed in the course of 15 minutes.
Yes.
In episode 4. So, yeah. I think they all have that idea of Camazotz, and it in A Wrinkle in Time is basically an absolute evil. It's a monstrosity. It's an abstract kind of hive mind that controls the planet of Camazotz, and it's not really given a personality. It's not someone who is ever human, you know? So I think that's what they're saying on this show is maybe they are just saying that the Mind Flayer is just this Lovecraftian evil from some kind of cosmic dimension, and it doesn't need to be explained what it is.
Well, I also like you mentioning the teacher. Because I think, like, an interesting thing, obviously this show, and in particular this season, the last 2 seasons, there's been a lot of parallels. Obviously, the Duffers pull so much from 80s culture and film and TV. But, like, there's been a lot of on-the-nose Nightmare on Elm Street parallels. Even, like, stealing kids, right? Like, this kind of alternate dimension, whether you're awake. Even all of the Turnbow, right? Like, if he's asleep and his eyes are covered, the Demogorgons won't be able to find him. Like, when things are different when you're asleep versus awake. I mean, there's this interesting thing, like, that a big part of that franchise is the sins of the adults impacting their offspring, right? And, like, there's something here other than, obviously, Joyce and Hopper and Murray have been the 3 adults that have always been on the side of the kids throughout the series, right? But otherwise, almost all the adults in Hawkins or in the universe of the show are either willfully ignorant of the insane shit that is happening around them all the time, or openly antagonistic. All the soldiers are trying to kill Eleven or capture her, or right,
Dr. Brenner,
yes.
now Dr. K.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there's an interesting thing of, like, if the Mind Flayer or the Upside Down represents, like, adulthood, and also adults are all, for the most part, kind of bad, again, with a couple notable exceptions, like, could they almost be like the Mind Flayer is impacting the adults of this city in some way, having them kind of do some bidding.
Now you're getting into some kind of, like, Stephen King Derry stuff, where, like, just all the citizens are kind of just so desensitized and evil that like they perpetuate the evil that flows through the town through generations. I really like that. I like the idea of the sins of the parent generation, especially since we're going to be revisiting 1959, the timeline that we see in Stranger Things: The First Shadow, the high school play, the production of Oklahoma. That's actually The Dark of the Moon, the Joyce's actual play that was the last time Henry Creel saw Patty Newby. I really do think we're gonna back to the way that like Back to the Future Part 2 goes into the rafters over the Johnny B. Good song.
Yeah.
That's essentially what Stranger Things: The First Shadow does without the time travel element. And I firmly believe we're gonna get to time travel. And there is another rumor we're gonna get to in a second, but this has been theorized before. I'm not the person to come up with this theory. What if they just establish, if it's not going to be Mind Flayer is ancient, primordial, absolute evil from a cosmic dimension, Lovecraft style, what if the Mind Flayer is Will? What if Will Byers in the future transforms into the Mind Flayer, and the way to stop the Mind Flayer is to basically sacrifice himself so that the Mind Flayer in the future cannot ever manifest? That Will is now, as of the end of the Sorcerer episode, basically taking the next stage of his evolution. He's becoming closer to Vecna, and he's going to get addicted to that power. And eventually he's going to get more and more powerful until he becomes what the Mind Flayer is. And the Mind Flayer can see through time. And then the Mind Flayer spotted him in season 2 and said, that's why he had that connection to him, is he's like, you are me at a younger age. And he's been trying to make the future meet the past. And Will has to sever that link by sacrificing himself. That could be what the big group hug is about, where Jonathan's crying, in the future episodes. They're all realizing, shit, this is the only way to stop the Mind Flayer, is to just basically nip him in the bud as a baby.
I love that theory. This is the first time I'm hearing of it. It also plays off like we've kind of speculated, is some character going to have to sacrifice themselves? And it feels like both Hopper and Eleven have already done that multiple times to save everybody else. So it would be nice if somebody else does that for a change. And obviously it's not like Joyce can sacrifice herself to save the town of Hawkins or something like that, right? Like to defeat Vecna or the Mind Flayer. So,
well, in a way, in a Sarah Connor way, she kind of could. Ooh. If we have the Sarah Connor on this show now, the mom of the child. I mean, that is a reason why we could go back to 1959. That's when Joyce and Lonnie Byers met. Or she wasn't Joyce Byers, she was Joyce Mondolano, met Lonnie Byers.
And is there a world, I mean, obviously their ages don't align because the Sarah Connor actress, Linda Hamilton is older than Winona Ryder and David Harbour.
By just maybe 10 years.
Yeah. But is there a world that we see Dr. K in the past as well?
I would love.
Could she be a teacher at the high school? Or
you know what's crazy is like all we know about her is that her name is Dr. K, and it's also weird that she is addressed by as Major General. Right? She is like she's a 2-star general, but she's doctor. And there are plenty of like high-ranking military officers who also just have a doctorate. That's maybe part of how they got to where they got. But it's just interesting that they call her Dr. K and not Major General K. And it's spelled K-A-Y, but is it like Men in Black thing?
Yeah, Jay. That's immediately where my brain went.
Or Homer Simpson. You remember his whole thing is his name was Homer J. Simpson. There was like a season 10 episode where he's like, "What is my middle name?" And then he pulls it back, and there's something covering it on the wall. He goes, "Now I'll no longer be known as Homer J. Simpson, and I'll be known as." And he pulls it back, and it's J-A-Y, Homer J. Simpson. So I don't know. I guarantee you, we're gonna learn more about Dr. K, and I think K could be an initial.
I would like that, only to say that like. This show has with the Carrie Elwes and like other characters where they like kind of drop in like an 80s actor just to be like, hey, cool, remember them? But like ultimately they are not like greater parts of the plot or the conspiracy necessarily. I would love it if she's not just this season's, lower level antagonist, but if she does play a larger role within the meta story.
Yeah. So let's move on to this Lego thing that we referenced. This is one thing that we are okay showing it to you. This came from one of our people on our subreddit, user Chasa_man. Thank you for sharing this. I didn't even see this. It's a Lego set showing it looks like either Robin and Hopper or Joyce and Hopper. I think it's definitely Hopper because he's got the beard and the blue hat. And written on the glass of this, it's definitely the radio station, is the wormhole. The same wormhole drawing that Mr. Clark showed to Erica's class. And I don't think it's a spoiler to show this because obviously they put that wormhole in episode 3 as a clue to anybody who's watching this. And the fact that he says it could even open a rift in time, they're not even trying to hide it. So clearly the group at the radio station, at the Squawk, is going to be using that as part of their plan. Time travel is going to be part of this. I pointed out, all the clues. The number of times we see 88 in digital red text, the number of times they reference the flux capacitor, A Wrinkle in Time. Now, A Wrinkle in Time is actually the weakest of the time travel clues because in A Wrinkle in Time, they're really dimension hopping and they time dilate Interstellar style. They're not like going back in time. I even really stretched in the breakdown and said that the Disney Sword in the Stone is a reference to a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court because it is the first example of time travel fiction by Mark Twain. It predated H.G. Wells' The Time Machine by like 6 years.
Wow.
And the only other examples are Rip Van Winkle, which is, again, a time dilation. It's just a guy who takes a long nap. And then Christmas Carol, which a lot of people say it's kind of time travel, but really he's just shown visions of Elseworlds as opposed to back in time. It's like It's a Wonderful Life. You're shown what the world would have looked like without you, or visions of things rather than you actually walked
more
in the past.
magic rather than you are physically transported. Yeah.
So Mark Twain was really the one who made that a whole thing of what if a man went back in time and walked around in the past. H.G. Wells went crazier with that later on. So I think any reference to King Arthur is like, okay, there was like a famous American fiction time travel story that we cannot ignore. So Jess and I talked a little bit about this on the sneak peek on Sunday, but Zach, how do you see time travel affecting the final 4 episodes?
Well, and we're going to come back to this with our third and final Stranger Things rumor, but it is interesting. I also think it's very interesting that is the TV station. And I like that, like, if that Lego set is an accurate depiction of something that happens in the show, which we have to assume it is. I like the drawing on the window is a very we don't have a whiteboard here because it's a radio station. Yeah. So let's get the marker on the window, and how cool to recreate that. Yeah. And also though it is prominently featured and plays an important role in those first 4 episodes, knowing that the radio station, the Squawk, feels like its role in this show is only going to grow. And I'm going to cite some other merch. I was just recently in a Target and they had Stranger Things merch prominently, a big display, but half of the merch is the logo for the radio station.
Oh, the
Which
Squawk.
Is strange because it is previously unused in the show, right? It's not in seasons 1 through 4.
No,
certainly not prominently, right? So it's that is them declaring 18 months ago when they had to sign these merchandising contracts or whatever, right? The big thing this season is the radio station, right? So that's interesting. And we've already seen this connection between radio broadcasts and communication to the upside down and things like that. You included in your remaining shots that have been shown in trailers that haven't been shown in the episodes, this weird special effecty thing with the radio tower.
Yeah, the Mind Flayer is spiraling up the radio tower. So
using radio as a way to communicate or transfer or whatever. Could it also be they use it as some kind of a way to time travel? Almost in the same way that though they're kind of clocks, but the Endgame wristwatches functionally become time travel devices, right? Maybe in this it's radios rather than clocks somehow, or radio waves or something like that. That tower becomes some kind of a transmitter that allows people to go back and forth. It does feel with the play that you've already mentioned, and that being set in a different time, what we're about to talk about, it does feel like there's going to be some kind of time travel. Now, how that denouements the plot will be interesting, but what's your current theory on if there is time travel? Is it just the Will has to go back and kill himself before he's whatever? Or do you think there's some other very specific kind of time travel that could be an important part of the show?
They've given us these dates. November 6th, 1959. I feel like that's got to be a date we revisit. Now, I guess my concern is that these episodes might really think everyone's going to have seen this play. And the Duffers have even said these final 4 episodes are really going to overlap even more with the play. And New Rockstars is working on a breakdown of the play. If you're able to see it, great. We understand tickets to Broadway and West End shows aren't cheap. And getting to London and New York is not cheap. So, like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, Netflix, you should have just done what Disney Plus did with Hamilton and done something and put it on Netflix.
Release a nice recording. Yeah,
you could
or do like they do with operas and stuff like that. They broadcast them into theaters as like one-time events, right? Yeah.
And maybe they will. Maybe Netflix will surprise us with that. I think it would be really cool. The thing is it's a very cool live show to see.
Yeah,
like the
crazy effects,
the lighting. Yeah, it's an incredible. It's not a musical. There's no Defying Gravity in it, but some of the best plays. Yes, there could be a musical adaptation. John Chu, get on it. But I do think the night of November 6, 1983, the night of November 6, 1959, I think those are 2 dates that will get endgamed back to. The Duffer Brothers have said that we're going to go even further back in the past than the play does. The play goes as far back to 1943 with the Philadelphia experiment. That was the USS Eldridge conspiracy theory that this U.S. warship was teleported somewhere, or they were trying to make it invisible to evade Nazi U-boats, and then it disappeared. And in the play, they established that Brenner's dad was on that boat. And that was what started his whole interest in extra dimensional travel. But they said they're going to go back even further in time than that. So like, that could open the door to any other kinds of crazy things that have happened in the past. We could go back to famous historical things. We could have Archduke Ferdinand's assassination, or what's the name of the battleship that exploded and before the bombings of Hiroshima? It was considered the biggest man-made explosion. It's referenced in Oppenheimer. It's when 2 merchant ships ran into each other, and it was like, poof.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know that.
It was considered the biggest explosion known to man.
Oh, wow.
That was a terrifying thing that happened in history. You could go back to, it's going to be crazy if they go back to ancient times, like, I don't know, Stonehenge is established.
Tree of Life style. They go back to the primordial ooze on the planet where like something starts as an amoeba, becomes a worm, becomes a 4-legged creature, becomes a Mind Flayer, becomes a Demogorgon.
Yeah. They just haven't like hinted at anything that much older. Other than if you want to get to if you're going to establish the Mind Flayer as an ancient primordial evil, the way the entity in It, Welcome to Derry and the It movies is, that came like, I don't know, so long ago. Like
thousands of years.
Millions of years ago, potentially.
So is it extraterrestrial? Is it some kind of ancient, like Lord of the Rings-esque, had to be banished from this plane and, there it festered and grew and whatever,
I just think it's not going to be that. I don't think, it doesn't strike me as the kind of show, like there's, because of Back to the Future, millennials and pretty much any generation younger than that links the 50s and the 80s together. In our minds, like we grew up with Back to the Future as what felt like a kind of old movie for us. And I'm speaking as a 90s kid. I know a lot of you are like 80s kids. It's like, no, that was a current release. But it's like we look nostalgically back on the modern era of Back to the Future in the same. It's like almost Peggy Sue Got Married is a similar thing, It's certain things like where
Stand By Me. There was a big wave of 50s films. That was like the boomers, right? Like creating art about their childhoods, much in the same way of like, the Duffers, even though they're actually too young, they weren't really alive during the early to mid 80s, but like they creating content about 30 years previous to them.
And It does this as well. Stephen King wrote It as a story set in the 80s, but the past timeline was in the 50s, was in the late 50s. Now the modern It stories in the Muschietti timeline are stories that the adults are in 2016. When they were kids, it was 1989. So it's just kind of interesting that we have these 30-year kind of intervals where weirdly, collectively in American pop culture, we just kind of see those two things as linked. So if you go back, what do you go to the 20s? It's kind of like weirdly, there's even cultural cycles here where America gets weirdly conservative and about family values during a certain decade. So you have the 50s baby boomer nuclear family generation where it was the Eisenhower years. In the 80s, it was the Reagan years. And then in the 20s, It was like the Hoover years and the Calvin Coolidge years, the Roaring 20s, Republican presidents. Now, to be a conservative back in the 20s is just a different thing than what it meant in the 50s and 80s. But it is just kind of like similar things where there was like, it was a boom, an era of economic boom, where American culture was really defined in a specific way. So in the 20s, that was the jazz age. In the 50s, that was rock and roll emerging and rockabilly and race music, and that really flourished in the 60s thereafter. But it was really the 50s that established American rock and roll music that it would become. In the 80s, it was American pop music and the advent of radio and MTV. So like you just didn't see the same kind of like monoculture in America in the 70s or in the 90s or in the 40s or in the 60s.
Whoa, interesting. And so to continue your metaphor, so then you know our version, the 2020s is Skibbity Toilet. That's our rock and roll.
Arguably, the internet age broke it. The internet age, we're kind of we've reached a singularity with the .com era of the late 90s that now, I don't know, we're too in it to know.
We're too in it because maybe we would have been saying the same thing in 1957 or whatever, right? Like you lack the perspective when you're living
we're in
the
2025 right now, and who knows, like 5 years from now, what the 2020s are really gonna be all about.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that is at least on a subconscious level with these writers, and so I feel like the furthest back we go is when characters like Henry Creel are born. Maybe at the end of he's clearly a baby boomer, right? Joyce and Hopper's generation are boomers in the show. So maybe we go back to like World War II or something like that, and then when he's born.
That would make a lot of sense. Because as much as like I want to, because of all the heavy Dungeons and Dragons themes in this show, I want to go back to the Middle Ages or something like that. Yeah. But that would make no sense, especially for Indiana, unless they, much like Welcome to Derry, unless they want to go back to like, indigenous people living in that area at the time or something like that, which is not something the show has really approached at all. So it would be strange to do it now. Yeah.
But I do think that the person leading the time travel efforts is going to be Vecna. I do think that's what he's building with this 12-spoked, fleshy, gross thing.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to build an organic clock that could twist all of reality in a specific way to open a wrinkle in time. And I don't know physically what this is going to look like. I don't know how mechanically this will work. I don't know how you can make flesh extensions of yourself and that has enough control over all of the cosmos to go back in time. I don't know how anything in the show set that up, but I do know they're going to be doing some kind of time travel. It's just inevitable at this point.
And if he can train, if he can have 12 little kids that he basically shapes into 11s, right? And they have all this kind of telekinetic or psychic powers, and then, and he can like force all that psychic weird brain energy into a fine laser beam. Maybe that can do anything, right? Maybe that can time travel. Maybe that can explode the world, whatever.
Or maybe because Will Byers is the Mind Flayer, and the Mind Flayer is this cosmic entity that is undefined by time, that has always existed. Maybe once Vecna can basically, you can prime a pump, you can increase something's charge in a specific way. That's basically what he's doing with Will Byers. He's activating him to be the ultimate navigator, the pilot, or just the engine of what this clock is, because he's connected to the Mind Flayer. And once he can fully link Will with the Mind Flayer in a way that's not just one channel from Mind Flayer to Will, but Will can now control the Mind Flayer, maybe that's how he goes back in time. Is like Will is basically in the Mind Flayer cosmos, bringing him in this vessel through different points in time. Again, I don't even know what this looks like. I don't even know what the fuck I'm saying. It's just like they're doing something. It's 12 spokes of a clock, right?
Print the quote. Erik Voss. They're doing something.
They're doing something. Okay, so we have one more batch of rumors and scoops that we want to talk about, but we're not gonna. There are basically leaked photos from the set. And if you don't want to know, you can stop watching now. We're not going to show you these things. We'll kind of vaguely describe what's in them. We just know that there is a section of the Stranger Things fandom that is discussing this, and we do want to participate in that conversation. And we have seen these photos. We don't know what they mean. We don't
I would
context.
say they're pretty lightweight.
Yeah, they're pretty lightweight.
This is not giving away giant plot details. We're going to use them to speculate, but there's not a ton there.
Yeah, there's contextual clues at best.
Yeah.
And so if you don't want to know those things, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. But for those of you who are little freaks, little goons, and want to know what the shit is, here's just kind of a description of like what's in these photos. Basically, there is a photo of Hopper.
Yeah.
In his chief of police uniform again.
He's like formal uniform.
Yep.
Yeah. And he's outdoors. He's like leaning against a truck or something like that. And we thought this was interesting for a couple of reasons. How many seasons has it been since he was wearing a policeman's uniform?
Season 3, I think he was still chief, maybe.
Yes,
early
but obviously,
on.
I mean, he spent a lot of time in Russia, and now he's spending half his evenings and days training 11 and/or going to the Upside Down.
I think he's homeless.
Yeah,
I don't know how he gets food.
He doesn't
or
still
anything.
have his weird cabin. We don't
Does
know.
he hunt his own foods? He mentioned waffle mix. I guess Murray hooks him up with food.
Yes, which we don't know. Is funny as much as we got like 5 hours in Hawkins in this first batch. We did not get a lot of like how the daily structure of Hawkins is currently working under quarantine. But this was interesting for a couple of reasons. Yeah, he's back in his uniform. So like we're to assume this is taking place significantly after the events of this first episode drop.
Or in an alternate timeline.
Ooh, or it could be a flashback, I guess.
Or it could be a flashback.
Well,
But
there's a good reason we think it's not a flashback.
Okay, so in the background of some of these shots is a cinema marquee. And there's actually 2 movie theaters that we're seeing in some of these shots. But in the ones behind Hopper, there's specifically on the movie theater marquee, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which is a third Indiana Jones movie that released in
1989.
1989.
Yes.
And some other movie theater marquees. We don't know if this is like part of the Stranger Things set, but it is like a Regal Sherman Oaks, not far from where I used to live.
Yeah, it is. It's right across from that Best Buy, right? Yeah. It's a Pacific Theater.
Pacific Theaters.
Yeah.
That's right. It shows Batman.
Yes, the Tim Burton 89 Batman.
1989 Batman. Something that was also on the movie theater marquee behind Finn Wolfhard in It, Chapter 1, which is set in 1989.
Great. I'll also say the title Batman on that movie marquee has an upside down A. That could have just been some fun set design, or it could upside down. That second marquee has Batman, Karate Kid 3, also released the summer of 1989. Field of Dreams, released April of 1989. And then the fourth one, which I'm particularly interested in, Eddie and the Cruisers, which Eddie and the Cruisers, a lesser seen Michael Pere, Joe Pantoliano, Tom Berenger film, released in 1983, 6 years apart from this. Now, I will say it had a sequel released in 1989, but that was Eddie and the Cruisers 2.
Okay.
This marquee does not have a 2 on it.
Maybe they were using the 2 in
Karate Kid 3.
Yeah, Karate Kid 3. They got one number.
Now, Eddie and the Cruisers is a much longer name, so you
Yeah.
don't have as much marquee space as you would with a Karate Kid to include, a numeral. But I will say that was a little interesting. And they're picking movies that came out months apart, which, movies can run for quite a while.
Especially in the 80s,
Especially
yeah.
back in the day. Jaws stayed in theaters for like a full year or whatever. But it does feel like Eddie and the Cruisers is a title picked for specific reasons. Eddie, obviously being a well-known character name in the show. And so maybe they just wanted to get a shout out to Eddie. It's the only, can you think of another movie named Eddie that would have, I think there was a Billy Crystal movie called Eddie, but that was released in the 90s.
Oh, Eddie Sizzy Hands?
But also, just to, again, if I'm going way too deep, because I've seen the movie Eddie and the Cruisers, I'm a fan of it. It's about a journalist investigating this kind of like mythical rock band whose singer disappeared. And kind of like similar to what we were just talking about, it was a movie made in the 80s about, years before. And so kind of like that boomer ideal of always like looking back on a golden era, right? Like, and it's kind of over the course, it's like this journalist interviewing all the band members about this Eddie figure who's the lead singer and like how cool he was and all this kind of stuff. And then it's kind of hinted at the end that he's still around. So like, a character named Eddie that we think is gone, but might still be around.
I do like that. I do like that theory a lot. And just the idea of ending this series in either flash forward in the year 1989 does seem right. It's a show set in the 80s. If you dare set foot in the year 1990, get the out. No, it's 1989. And even then, like, I was even thinking the 1987, I was not alive yet in 1987, but those people I know who were did say that, like, the 80s started to feel like they were dying around the late 80s.
The culture is very different from like 85 to 88 or 89, right? Like that was a big transformation. The late 80s is a big transformational, and like you kind of think that like the 90s are starting about 88, 89, right?
Because,
like,
in 89, the Berlin Wall comes down. Basically, the Cold War is kind of coming to an end. After Chernobyl happens, basically the Cold War takes a turn that it never turns back from. Like, that permanently disgraced the Soviet Union in the years that followed. So that, Berlin Wall comes down. And then in 1991, you have like the START treaties. You have the Soviet Union breaks apart.
Yeah. And then you're getting into the Clinton era, which feels like light years different than the Reagan era or whatever, right? And like you could see if the events of the next two batches of episodes mostly still take place, directly after the events of the last episode, but, maybe over the course of weeks or months or whatever. And they end in some kind of giant catastrophe. And then we kind of get an epilogue. You know what I mean? A year later, 2 years later, the character's kind of coming back. We catch up with where their life is at now. Hopper's back to being a cop. This character is that. I will say, as part of this batch, the only other character that is included in these photos, there's a photo of Mike in front of the same Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade marquee. So he's in the same place at the same time as Hopper, but we don't see any of the other characters. So does that basically confirm everybody else dies?
No.
Okay.
Well, no, I don't think so. I think it's very possible that like no one dies.
Oh,
like even Ted Wheeler survived. Hey, there's another Eddie right there, old Teddy Wheeler.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah.
Even that guy survived.
Yeah, they refuse to even kill the parents that get like gnarly, almost ripped in half by a Demogorgon. They're still just like, on the ventilator in the hospital.
I get keeping Karen alive so that she can write H-E. Yeah. Do you think as soon as she wrote H-E, they're like, we're good?
Yeah.
They're like, also, hold on, H-E-N-R.
Do you think also Karen's just kept alive because there's a really hot male nurse that she's going to consider cheating on her husband with?
Oh, yeah. Bow, bow. I have to admit, when it comes to Stranger Things, my theories have been bad over the years. Anytime I've had a theory, for season 4, I was like 86. April of 86. They're going to Chernobyl, baby. No, that didn't happen at all. If you go back and look at my theories for season 2, season 3, awful, just wrong.
Can you believe you've been covering this show for like 9 years?
It is, I've been covering Stranger Things longer than I've been covering Marvel. Like, seriously, in 2016, we were making videos about Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead. We kind of covered Marvel a little bit, but it was like Stranger Things came up, and that was like, I was like, oh, we got to cover this. Not realizing the phenomenon it would become. I thought this was just one of many mini-series coming out of the different streamers. And I'm like, people are loving it. And then, it became like this huge box office thing for 10 years. 9 years. Feels like 10.
It's wild.
Wild. So, my theories could be wrong. The only theory I feel somewhat confident about is that Will equals Vecna. That Will become Vecna. But part of the reason I feel confident about it is I remember with Game of Thrones final season, I theorized hard that Bran Stark would become the Night King in the future. Mm-hmm. And I felt so good about that theory. I was like, there's time travel in this too. Hold the door. All this shit. Bran is going to live forever and ever. He's going to become like another three-eyed raven. And one day he'll become the Night King. And so that's why the Night King is interested in Bran. Nope. No. You have to be careful. You really, really do have to be careful and just enjoy the ride.
The accuracy is not the fun part. Wild speculation is the fun part, Erik.
I guess so.
I know you stake your reputation on a regular basis on your accuracy. So maybe it's a little different.
Right.
My reputation isn't full of shit, so I can say whatever I want. But
I really do care if I'm accurate. No, honestly, I care if I'm informative, if I'm informative, educational,
Yes.
helpful. I really do care. Like, I want you guys to come up with your own theories. All I'm trying to do is find interesting details and clues, and I'm pretty good at figuring out whether, at this point, I feel like I'm good at figuring out if they're intentional or just like incidental. Like if something like the wormhole, the Duffer Brothers wrote that in.
Yes.
But other things like, oh, this character, there's a game board in Derek Turnbow's bedroom that's mastermind. I think that might have just been the set dresser.
Yeah, that's
and
just
and
fun.
I used to not really be good at that. I thought everything was everything. Not anymore. Now I'm pretty good at figuring out, oh, they are setting something up with this. This other thing is a red herring. It's not really worth digging into. Well, this has been a pleasure chatting about Stranger Things with you, Zach. Again, the Road to Doomsday is going to be coming in January. And so I think you're really going to like it. It's going to be a really, really fun show. We're taking some time to properly rewatch these movies. It's been years for some of us, but we really want to take a look at these and figure out what will be coming back for Avengers Doomsday. And I think you're going to want to subscribe for what will essentially be the ultimate Marvel rewatch podcast. I think New Rockstars is a team to do it, and I'm really proud of the work we're working on. So big thanks to everyone who watched this episode or listened to us. Thank you to Zach Huddleston.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Brian Kim for producing and editing this episode. And thanks to all the editors in the New Rockstars Network who help us out all the time. Joshua Stephen Hurd, Abby Freel. And thank you again to you. Happy holidays. And we'll see you on the right side up.